Well, during this lockdown that we're now under here in the Isle of Man, certain things have been able to carry on, and then we've had a harder lockdown. But one area which I really want to catch up with was what's happening in dentistry. And Mark Hepworth is joining us. Mark, we talked to you ages ago. We had these amazing pictures of you in your full PPE and all that. What is the situation now? Because I know the UK, because their lockdown's gone on so much longer, the dentist has come back up. But I understand, and maybe you can confirm, that things here are not quite as good now. You're back into some sort of lockdown, are you?
Yes, that's absolutely right. And I think it's probably, I'm speaking mainly for myself, but the general feeling among most of the dentists on the island is that we're all a little bit confused, a little bit frustrated, possibly bordering on anger, because obviously we were told very late Thursday night, Friday morning, that dental services should just shut and only provide what they call a AAA approach, which is advice, analgesia, and antibiotics. We have been told that we are allowed to see patients for emergencies only, but that emergency treatment has been left very vague, and it's just sort of emergencies, and then they've kind of left that to us. So one of the things that we're a little bit sort of confused about, obviously back in May and June, we spent weeks and weeks, and I had many a sort of late night with 4 or 5 of the other dentists. We drew up a standard operating protocol, and we had procedures in place, protective gear. I mean, you yourself came around and we showed you around the practice. Every practice on the island, before we could open and see patients, had to be able to show that we could operate under COVID conditions. When we were actually signed off, if you like, and allowed to open, for a period of 4 weeks, we had to operate under full COVID protective gear. Even though at that time there were no COVID cases on the island, we had to operate in full protective gear as if every patient we were treating was a COVID risk. And this was obviously to prove that we could deal with the situations, we could handle patients no matter what the scenario was, and we could take the protective gear on and off just to show that we were safe. So the idea was to be prepared so that if new cases came onto the island, we could still offer a full range of services. Now, the way it seems to be at the moment, that's almost like that protocol that has just been thrown out. They've just kind of gone, right, we know you proved that you were safe. We know that you can operate that way. Forget about that. Just almost shut everything down and just provide advice again.
Oh, okay, let's make this clear. You're being told you can't go back to your main way of doing it during the lockdown, which you had all the protocols in place. You're just being left in the dark on this?
Well, they just sort of said, just stop routine treatment, or almost stop sort of the necessary treatment, and and just offer advice, analgesics, and antibiotics. And if you have to do treatment, it's almost like that has to be as a last resort.
So things are worse than they were before then, once you got up and running.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's a little bit embarrassing, because for the last 9 months, I've been talking to colleagues in the UK who they went back to work before we did in June. They are still wearing the masks and the gowns. They're still seeing patients, so they're still operating. Quite a few of them haven't been vaccinated yet. I mean, bear in mind, I think virtually every dental surgery, all the staff have been vaccinated. So, now we're sort of asking the question, well, if you vaccinated all the healthcare workers first, I assumed that was so that we could still see patients and we're protected. But also, the vaccination does give you protection so that you don't pass it on, you don't transmit it. There's a Nature article this week that says exactly that. Vaccinated or healthcare workers that have had the vaccine show almost no transmission. So, they're not only protected, but they're not transmitting it to people who haven't been vaccinated.
Yeah, but I've asked that question in the press briefings and we don't get that answer. We get the opposite, saying it still, doesn't show anything, or not enough anyway. But this is disputed areas. How can you resolve this, though? Because clearly you want to work, you think you're safe to work. If your patients also are happy to come in, surely things should move. And I understand your frustration. What can you do to unblock this logjam?
Well, at the moment, one of the things that we're worried about is we don't want to shut the practices and have patients having to travel to one practice, say in Douglas or Ramsey. So the idea is that the patients need to see their own dentists. We're familiar with the patient's medical histories. We're familiar with the patients. The patients sort of trust us. As I've said in the past and joked about it, everyone hates going to the dentist. You don't want to see a new dentist. You want to see the dentist that you've been seeing. So that sort of familiarity is what we want to keep. We also don't think it's necessarily safe that if there's only a hub in Douglas and you've got patients from Ramsey and Castletown coming down to Douglas, aren't you then having people mixing and making sort of unnecessary journeys? So again, if people can keep going to their own dentist, that would be the ideal scenario. We fully appreciate that we need to sort of space out patients so that we're not having the mix in the reception and the sort of waiting room. So we've sort of said, right, if we can not see checkups and if we can reduce things like hygiene treatments, which are actually quite important. I mean, the checkups are important because we're constantly doing oral cancer screens. So again, we're putting them on the back burner. And I think David Ashford said himself he didn't want to sort of slow down or stop cancer screens, which is effectively what you're asking us to do. So we want to be able to sort of still provide essential treatment and patients who have got treatments already treatment planned and already in the books. So this could be fillings that need replacing. It could be broken teeth. It could even be something simple. I've got one lady who's broken a denture. So she's got no teeth. Now, she obviously needs new teeth to eat. What do I say to her? That, well, I'm sorry, I can't see you at the moment because it's not an emergency. So the fact that she needs to eat, I think that's probably quite important. Now, so things like that, the essential treatments, the things that are already booked in, those are the ones that we still want to be able to provide. Again, wearing our full protective gear, we can put it on, we've taken it off. A lot of the tests that we did in June, even though there weren't any cases sort of August, September, October, November, we've still been checking everybody's temperature. All the patients that have been coming to the practices, they're probably fed up with being constantly asked, have you been off the island? Have you been in contact with anybody? And they're saying, really, there aren't any cases on the island at the moment, Mark. Yet we know, but we're still just asking the questions. We're still taking their temperatures. So it's those sorts of things that we feel, we need to be able to do the essential treatments for our patients to make sure that they're safe and to make sure that problems don't become bigger problems that then, are emergencies.
And you're in the private sector, so it's obviously hitting you quite hard. Is it also for the NHS dentists as well? Is everyone being affected the same way?
Yeah, no. We think as far as we know, the NHS, they're not hit quite the same way financially, but we think the NHS practices have all been, the message has gone across the board to dentists full stop to sort of just rely on this AAA approach, which I think most dentists have always disagreed with because it is almost like, I've got toothache, have some antibiotics. And, for years we've known that just giving somebody antibiotics does not work against pain. It's the treatment that's the required factor.
Well, David Ashford probably will watch this, or certainly will hear about it. I know you've, as you said, already been in touch with, and like other dentists, I'm thinking to myself, this is just they've taken sort of knee-jerk reaction almost, and by maybe Monday things can be looked at again. Yeah,
I'm hoping so, because I think it's quite sensible to suddenly say to everybody, right, wait a minute, we're in, whether you call it a circuit break, whether you call it a fire break, I think that sort of situation is very sensible to slow down, wait for a second, and just oversee what's happening. But don't forget, in the UK, the dentists there are still operating. They're seeing more patients. They're probably seeing patients who may have COVID, whether that's symptomatic or asymptomatic, and are still operating and are still providing a full level of treatment. So for us, I mean, we've all made big sacrifices and big changes because, again, what you've got to remember is even if I've been vaccinated and I'm at work, I'm also conscious that when I come home, is there a possibility that I could transmit something to my children, to my wife? So, we literally go into work wearing one set of clothes, fully change, then put the protective gear on, then work, back into the sort of clothes, come home, change again into your normal clothes, and the hand washing and the sort of That's just ingrained into us. We do that naturally, so that's not an issue. And I think I said to you at the time, the fact that we've got to wear all the extra gowns and the extra protective gear is something that you just do. It's part of the job, so we can accept that. And again, our priority is to keep the patients safe, whether that's keeping them safe from the virus, but also keeping them safe from dental problems and oral cancer, and then keeping our staff and ourselves sort of safe as a secondary.